PowerShell implements a new type of command called a cmdlet. It's a lightweight version of a traditional command. As a result, the command names are built differently and look different than what we're used to from other shells like Bash. In order to ease the transition for a Bash script user to a new PowerShell user, many of the commands that you're familiar with from the Bash world are available to you within PowerShell, or at least they appear to be. We can type the same command names, even if what they do is actually slightly different, or how they get it done is different. Most of these are either aliases or functions that perform tasks in PowerShell using PowerShell cmdlets to simulate or affect the same work as what you would get if you ran the corresponding Bash command. So they look pretty familiar. They feel familiar. They make it easy to get started, but they do tend to work a little differently under the covers. They all work with objects, even though the commands look like Bash commands, because they're really running cmdlets that work with objects. And knowing what objects are and how they interact will help us to understand the differences with these commands. As an example, if we wanted to make a new directory in Bash, we would use the makedir command, mkdir, and we would tell it the name of one or more directories to make. If we wanted to make multiple directories, we would give multiple directory names on the command line. To use makedir in PowerShell, we type it out very similar for simple commands. For example, we can type makedir and then give it a name, and it will make the directory. Now, in Bash, when we do this, unless there's a problem, there is no output. So when we put a makedir command into a Bash shell script, the only time that a user will ever see something come out on their screen as a result of us having a makedir command in our script is if there's some kind of an error, usually permissions. In PowerShell, when we make that directory, it's actually making a directory and then creating an object to represent that directory, and it is creating output from the makedir command, which actually is the object that is representing or connected to that directory we just made. Since we didn't tell it what to do with the output, just like it would be in Bash, the output comes out on the screen. The object gets displayed using its default display format. So while makedir has the same effect in the file system in PowerShell as it does in Bash, or in DOS, because the command exists there as well, the way the work gets done and the output produced are not the same. So we have to take that into account. Other changes are also evident if you start exploring these. For example, if I were to change to that directory I just made, I could use the PowerShell cmdlet set location, or I could use cd, which is another one of these compatibility commands that have been added. And it will change to that directory. And just like it used to, there is no output. So cd is not creating any objects for output. cd is, however, different than it used to be, because with the set location cmdlet, you don't have to give a destination directory to change to. And if you don't, it simply won't change location. If in Bash you do the command cd and don't tell it where to go to, it'll automatically take you to your home directory. If you do cd without any options in PowerShell, nothing happens. There isn't an error. It doesn't say you typed it wrong. It just doesn't do anything. So this can create strange logic issues in your scripts. If, for example, you're changing to a directory and expecting the directory name to either come from another command or to be contained in a variable, and if they're empty, you won't get an error from your script. You won't change directory to wherever you think you were going, and your script will continue on doing things in the wrong place. So there are things to think about. There are changes. Okay? You can use the compatibility commands that are in this list, and there are others as well. There's no reason you can't use them, but you do need to remember that they are slightly different. They work with objects, they produce objects, and that does change how they work a little bit. The best idea when you're working with PowerShell is by all means use the old commands to get familiar, but try to familiarize yourself with the new versions of the commands. All of the new versions of the commands for working with files, to create directories, to create files, to move files around, to make copies of files, to remove things, to make directories, to see what's in a file, to change what's in a file, to add things to a file. Those commandlets are on the current slide. Set location will change your position. Get child item is a way of seeing what is in a directory. New item can be used to make files and directories. Remove item can be used to get rid of files and directories. Move and copy item do exactly what their names suggest. Get content is the way to retrieve what is in a file. Set content will allow you to change what's in a file. And of course, add content allows you to add things. Now, these commandlets are more versatile than just working with files, but they will certainly do your file tasks for you. Bear in mind, they are new commands. So some things will work a little differently with them, and you really need to use them to get familiar with them. So I strongly suggest that wherever possible, as you go forward, try to use the new commands, because it will certainly help you to remember that they do work a little differently and that you might need to be thinking about how they work. Whether you use the compatibility commands from the previous slide, or whether you use the native commands such as these file handling commands, or any other commandlets that are in PowerShell, bear in mind, any output you will get from them in your scripts will always be in the form of objects. You will never just get a simple number for output or text for output. If the output of your command is text, what you will get is a string object with a string of data in it. If it's a number that's supposed to come out from your command, you will get back a number object, one of several different kinds. If it's a directory, it's going to be a file type object, and so on. And what you can do with that depends on the object itself. Objects have their own rules for these things.